when you surround yourself with really smart and really talented people, it creates a safety net too. And so that, when you're in a good team and in a good network, it doesn't even have to be formal. It can be informal. There are people that just really aren't going to let you fail, or not completely fail. Like, you'll have stumbles here and there, you'll have fumbles here and there, but you need those to learn and grow.
Welcome to the Game of Her Own podcast, a podcast about women who work in sports. I'm your host, Jahaan Blake. After 15 years of working for 3 major league teams, including the Boston Red Sox, Los Angeles Dodgers, and the Chicago Cubs, I discovered the one thing I loved the most was helping women in sports shatter glass ceilings and take their seat at the table. I loved it so much that I made a business out of it. I have the honor of coaching high-performing women in the sports and entertainment industry and supporting them as they go after exactly what they want in their career. So if you are feeling tired of waiting on the sidelines, done being overlooked for promotions, and you're ready to pull ahead of the pack and take your career to the next level, girl, I'm here for it. I also created the Game of Her Own podcast to support you as well. We are here to share the stories of incredible women who work in sports and entertainment. These leaders and trailblazers will inspire you with their success and the lessons they've learned along the way to the top. Ladies, there is nothing like women empowering women. I am so honored you're here.
All right, friends, we have decided to extend the Off the Beaten Path series through the end of the summer. So the last Thursday of the month, you will hear a story about a woman who works in sports. But the best part, she's not only a part of the organization, she created it. If you missed the first 3 from the spring, just scroll back for the titles Off the Beaten Path. We will also link to it in the show notes. My next guest is Laura Dixon, the former head of external affairs for the San Antonio Spurs, and is now the founder and president of the Pro Sports Assembly. Listen in as Laura shares her smart approach to creating the new company, the first thing she did before launching the business, and how she turned fear into a motivator. And y'all know there is so much more. Make sure you stick around to the end when Laura and I talk about the anniversary of George Floyd's death and how the racial awakening that occurred in our country over a year ago is impacting how organizations are now recalibrating. All right, friends, let's do this. Laura, welcome to the Game of Her Own podcast. I am so excited that you're here.
Well, thank you. I'm excited to be here. I love listening to your podcast. So this is a real treat, and I'm excited to see what we'll uncover.
Yes. All right. Well, thank you for that. And so I guess you know the first question, which is take us back in time and tell us when you first fell in love with sports.
This is just, I feel like we could just skip over this because I don't remember not being in love with sports. I honestly, some folks have heard this story, but my dad is a coach and he was a Southwest Conference official, and my family's just always been around sport, whether that's, at the Pee-wee football level or the collegiate level, and even in pro sports. So he was also a scout in Major League Baseball for a while. So I remember getting like these shipments of gear that would show up at our house from the New York Mets or the Arizona Diamondbacks. And we would just think that, we had won the lottery or something. And we were getting like beach towels and pennants and hats. And I'm sure it was stuff now after working for a team. They were like, well, what do we do with all this promotional product that's been left over this season? Oh, let's send it to the scouts families. That was our Christmas in July. Yeah. So just always love sport. I think I fell in love with sport as a career when I realized that the platform was really powerful, and that, if you had an opportunity to influence using the platform of sport, that you're uniquely, positioned to reach people and reach common ground with people in a unique way. That really spoke to my soul. Someone who, once upon a time in high school thought maybe I should be a missionary. I think sport became my mission field, and it's just being able to get the spirit around sports directed toward impact and doing good.
Now, I know you've had a long career in sports, but this series is all about, and I want to hear about that too. This series is all about, off the beaten path, women who are not part of an organization or working for an organization. They created their own organization. So tell everybody what you do. And I always say who you do it for, but that's you.
Sure. I guess I always feel like I've been a little bit off the beaten path because I always have had something else going on. I don't know if it was my parents or clients or what that inspired me to make sure that, you don't have all your eggs in one basket. That stuck with me. In fact, one conversation I remember distinctly clear with a client, this was probably close to 20 years ago now, but Bill Self, who's the head coach at Kansas, right after they won the title in 2008. I think I was the first person that ended up seeing him in his office. So it was, probably 2 weeks later, right? Because after you win, you go do all these things, you take a little break, you come back. And I walked in and said, well, I guess, your job's pretty secure for a while. That changes things, how we can plan long-term. And let's think about that. And he's like, Laura, are you serious? I could say the wrong thing tomorrow and have a bad interaction with one donor and I could not have a job the next day. He's like, this world is, so unpredictable. And that just made me pause and think, you just won the national title in an amazing fashion. And that's pretty remarkable. And, your mind is thinking about how fragile your job is. So I think that's, a story I reflect on that's always inspired me to, continue to make sure that there are other things going on besides, just being singularly focused on, someone else's decisions that control the outcomes of your life. When I went to work for the Spurs about 12 years ago, almost 12 years ago, it was the first time I'd been inside of a team. And I recognized right away that there was not a trade association or an organization that really brought the people together that work in pro sports. We did a lot of that stuff on our own with the NBA teams, the folks that were leading foundations and community relations. We would organize ourselves. But there wasn't an organization like NACDA. That's my kind of point of reference for college athletics. Those of you that, are involved in college athletics, you know what NACDA does, how it represents the industry, how it advocates for the people in the industry, how it, drives strategy forward for the industry. And so we decided to create that. And that's what the Pro Sports Assembly is. We, like most associations, are a membership-based, member-led organization and are, in our infancy stages, still just 8 months old and, growing pretty rapidly. But we are very intentional in our growth and intentional how we design the organization. We designed the leadership of the organization to look like how we want to see leadership in pro sports. So there's, almost 50-50 representation of male, female, the gender diversity, the geographic diversity, the sport diversity, the cultural, ethnic, racial diversity are as well represented in a small advisory board and a small governing board as we could, as we could make it. And that's what we want to see for the future of sport and leadership. We are making great strides and welcoming new members and partners on board and, just really focused on how we can help drive the industry forward, create some accountability.
Okay. So 8 months old. And so that's really new. So when you had this idea, because you were the founder and president, correct?
I am happy to share all the names of the people who are on this journey, but they will give me credit for it being my idea. But ideas are a dime a dozen. It's getting the right people on board to execute that makes all the difference.
So true. That could be the podcast right here. For anyone who wants to start a business, take that one piece of advice and run with it. So when you were having this idea, so I'm sure you had it back when you were with the Spurs.
Yeah.
But when you finally decided to bring it to life, what was that like? Finally saying, okay, it's time to do this.
You start recruiting people, stakeholders that you think want to be involved and could be involved and who could provide leadership. And that was the key. There were a couple of folks at the Spurs there, and then we talked about, what this could look like. We went and met with the CEO of the Mavericks, the executive director at the NBPA, and started, reaching out to others to test the water. Like any good business, you want to go out and do your market research, right? Product testing. You've got to understand what the market really needs and wants. And because this is a brand new concept, not for people in general or business in general, But for the pro sports industry, if someone hadn't worked in another industry with a well-established and strong association, it just took, more time to help them connect the dots. We, continued to have these discovery conversations, exploratory calls. And on May the 26th last year, we ended up having our first advisory board meeting, and I'll tell you more about that later, but we were supposed to launch at South by Southwest. We had secured the opening keynote for the sports conference. We were going to have a spectacular lineup of speakers and capture that content, and it would really help us introduce the organization and grow. As the world knows, South by Southwest did not happen, and we had to reset. And since then, we've built out our governing board, we've built out our advisory board, we've grown our membership base, we have introduced the first certificate for members of the organization, and have a new learning management system coming, and communities in place where, if you lead foundations, you have this community here. And anyway, typical trade association things, but the momentum that we needed to get lifted and launched really came when the Mavericks committed to providing seed funding. St. Marshall, again, one of the first people that we met with, and it was almost about a year later, but they committed to providing the seed funding to get the organization launched, and that was critical. And then when we had our first advisory and governing board meeting jointly on May the 26th, we all agreed to hold each other accountable, set some aspirational goals, and get going. And that's what we've done. And, with any organization that's driven by volunteers, we have our challenges that come with that, but I'm very proud to say that everyone is really invested and committed and doing the work to set us up for success, building a really firm foundation. And then we hired somebody. We've got four people on contract now, and that is a big victory for a young organization.
Yeah, that's a huge congratulations.
Yeah.
So starting something from scratch is it's hard, and it takes a lot out of you sometimes. Was there any fears that you had when you were first putting this together?
Yeah. Of course, there's always fear, especially when you bring people into the mix, where now you have this whole group of people who know what the intentions are, what the goals are, what the aspirations are, and they're putting their name to it. There's no better motivator for me than to know that someone else has hitched, their wagon to the vision, and that you cannot let them have a bad experience or, let their armor get any chinks in it, because they're going to, to this battle with you. And I think that's just a motivator for me, is to, make sure that we're delivering and producing something that would make everyone associated with it proud. Knowing that we're not going to be perfect, so that when you talk about the fears, allowing room for imperfections and grace, and being that way with yourself and with your partners in the work. I think always trying to keep in mind that, Rome wasn't built in a day. So when you're starting something new, you, especially as a founder or, an early adopter, can have a real clear vision of what could be and what can be, and just being patient to know you've got to do the incremental work and a lot of mundane things to build the foundation to get to that place eventually.
Is right on, going through the same sort of stuff, just that mundane stuff that you got to do it. But what I'm also hearing is you kind of turn one of your fears into a motivator. Yeah, you don't want to let anyone down who you're bringing all along for this ride, whether they're on the board or an employee or whatever, that has become your motivation.
Yeah. In a startup phase, whether, it's a nonprofit or a for-profit, you're getting people to invest in ideas more than actual products sometimes. But it turns into new, innovative, impactful outcomes, and the people have to be involved to get the outcomes that you want. And we design systems. I get real philosophical here, but when we look at the outcomes that we're getting in society in different places, well, we're getting the outcomes that our systems have been designed to provide. That's, why being intentional about how you design things from the very beginning is so important. And again, knowing that you're not going to get it perfectly. But I think about like, why do we have so many kids in foster care? Well, we have created a system that focuses on punishing families rather than rehabilitating families. And why do we have so many people in prison? Well, we have created a system that is more focused on taking people out of society rather than helping them learn how to manage and be productive in society. Building the systems that will get the outcomes that you want is really important. And I know people inside of organizations are so entrepreneurial too, and can create new programs, design new systems, design new goals for fans, for revenue, for community impact, for player development. And you just have to start. You can keep making plans and keep making goals and keep brainstorming. But, if you don't start and you don't push, send or hit go, then, it's just going to stay in that holding pattern.
Yeah. So your startup, you were looking for funding. I mean, you're going to different investors and asking for that. Were you nervous when you were doing that? Talk us through that, what that looked like.
As a nonprofit, it's a little bit different, right? Than when you're creating a new product, app, digital or real. We had to have people investing that were authentic, and really wanted to support the outcomes that we wanted to see. And I guess I should tell you a little bit more about that. So specifically related to the Pro Sports Assembly, creating an association is one thing, but doing it with intention around the long-term impact that you want to have on the industry is what we were trying to do. And so making sure that the partners, the teams, the leagues, the unions, the venues, the initial donors are committed to being on this journey with us to improve more equitable outcomes and leadership was really critical. And we understand that everybody's in a different place on that journey, right? Some organizations have been led and have been committing to advancing the industry as a whole for a long time, and some have just been hyper focused on their organization, their geography, and can afford to do that, and no one's going to force them to change. That's always a decision they have to make. But when we were making the initial pitch, and we still are, we're pitching constantly to bring new members on board to grow the assembly. We're always very transparent with them about where we are and where we aspire to be and how we plan to impact leadership across professional sports. The advancement of women, the advancement of historically underrepresented talent, across the industry really drives and motivates us to keep growing.
Yeah, tell us more. So for Game of Her Own listeners who are hearing what you're saying and are just like, well, tell me more about this Pro Sports Assembly. I'm sure you're striking a nerve too with people who are like when you say things like underrepresented and stuff like that. So talk a little bit more about what Pro Sports Assembly looks like.
I'm trying to see if I can come up with a good comparison. So you have like the American Medical Association, right? So everybody who works as a doctor, physician, or physician's assistant, can be a part of this association. And it's where they get the latest and greatest on the industry, like how many people work in the industry, what is the impact of the representation of the industry beyond your practice or beyond your specialty area. And so if you can kind of translate that to pro sports, it's like, okay, everybody that works in pro sports, we don't know how many people work in pro sports. So that is one of the big projects that we're trying to, we're building out, is get a handle on how many people represent this industry. And once you then have that in place, if you want to move the needle, you've got to know where the needle is. And so that's what we're working to do in one regard, is identify where this needle is so we know how to push and negotiate it moving forward. And so I think I'll tie that to what we call the 4 E's for the Pro Sports Assembly. And really these just kind of help us keep our pillars tight and focused. And so we work to empower our membership base by providing them research on the industry, providing them access to tools to research their own organization. We're working with the Global Sport Institute at Arizona State University on most of that work. We've also partnered with Wasserman and the Collective, and we'll continue to bring others on board if and when it makes sense. But the Ken Shropshire and his team at Arizona State are really a tremendous partner, and we're really excited about what the future holds there. But the empowerment is a big part of what any good trade association does, and we specifically designed some of that for women and for other groups that have been underrepresented. And what that could be veterans, that could be Black professionals in sports, and I say pro sports, I want to be very clear, like we are hyper focused on professional sports. But again, groups that we like to self-select and put ourselves in. We don't force people to, pick or choose a group to be associated with. So there's the empowerment pillar, there's the engagement pillar. And so, you have a verified network of people who work in pro sports who are coming to the table, who can tell you from their experience what priorities should be or what focus areas should be. Education and equip. So those are the 4 pillars. And the education is a very, traditional professional development. The certificate program that we're offering is an inclusive leadership, and that's a partnership that we have with RISE. And we have a course coming up with Breakthrough Brands that is specifically for your own personal brand development. And then the equip is, we're providing tools. So we have partnered with the Female Quotient and Gap Square to provide an evaluation tool for teams, leagues, unions, but this is at the organizational level to assess where they are when it relates to equity building, basically. So where are your gaps in representation? Are there gender gaps? Are there pay gaps? Are there policy gaps? And this assessment tool helps any organization that becomes a member, and any organization that's a member has access to this as part of their membership. There's not additional, fees tied to that. It's something that, if they went into the open market to pay for, be a very expensive endeavor. We're proud to provide it to our member organizations.
I'm kind of like, as you're talking about it, and as I've read and done my research when you first launched, I'm like a little mad that this wasn't around when I was working for teams. Yeah. This I can't even imagine how that would have supported me in my growth when I was first starting out, or when I moved to teams, different teams. It would have supported me throughout my whole career.
I'm glad that you said that. I think you're very kind, and that's what we want people to feel, that our members, and we want it to be something that people feel like is a must do if you're working in professional sports. So that's the way, again, we're trying to design and build it so that it is something that you feel like you have to do when you work in the space. Thank you for recognizing that. I mean, one of the things that we like to imagine is like, well, what if we had been around 10 years ago and COVID hit? Like, how much more swiftly would the industry and, leaders at all levels and organizations been able to address and explore how they should respond? And not that there aren't pockets of people doing that now. I think the commissioners at the leagues probably do a good job of communicating with each other, but there's so many people that cascade out and down from the commissioner's office that don't have a forum for connecting just with their colleagues in pro sports. There are complementary organizations that we highly value and respect the work that they're doing. This is more or less just a safe space for people who are specifically in a team, league, or union, and may want to have conversations that are sensitive to that. That if they don't know who's in the room or who's in the conversation otherwise, may not be as transparent about it.
Yes, this is fantastic. And what I'll do is, everyone who's listening, I will link to all of this in the show notes, so you can learn more about Pro Sports Assembly, dive in, figure out this something that you want to be a part of, your organization. You can dig a little deeper for sure. Take us back a little bit though. So 11 years at the Spurs. Talk about your time there, and how was it advocating for yourself and I mean, you did really well there. And of course, here we go. So you were head of external affairs. You were also executive director of community responsibility.
Foundation.
Yeah. So talk about that and how you got there in those positions.
I'm a very proud Spurs alum, and alumni network is really incredible. So I was running my own business before, was actually pitching the Spurs to outsource some of the business when they were going through a bit of a restructure. And we had a long courtship, and I ended up moving to San Antonio. Had about a year of transition. It was pretty unique, but I had a unique offer and a unique leader that I was working for, and we made it work. And I think this question really kind of speaks to the heart of what motivates me personally. I think that there are great opportunities out there that meet people and their passions and their pursuits. And this one met me when I was just figuring out that I really like to create and build things. And there are pros and cons to that. Like sometimes that means that there is no precedent in place. You're starting from scratch, blank slate, no precedent. And that can be a motivator for, a lot of people, or that can be an intimidator for a lot of people. And I think even one person could be motivated and intimidated by that at the same time. I certainly have experienced that, where I was figuring out, like, personally, the opportunity to build something from scratch, using a sport as a platform, and knowing that it would have impact, or that is, the intention in designing it, is right in my sweet spot. That's what I was doing before I went to the Spurs. That's what that was the opportunity presented to me at the Spurs. And quite frankly, my evolution inside of the organization was tied to that as well. Once the foundation was well established, we went from having no bank account to a $7 million reserve. And that was in a matter of 5 years. Built the staff up to about 14 people. We're making tremendous strides. That's when I also realized, like, hey, there's no one leading our government affairs work, and state legislatures really getting interesting in Texas. And, we want to get this 50-50 raffle passed. That's just one thing that impacts our business. There are so many factors that are impacting our business that are really defined by the policy. And so I moved over to lead our government relations efforts, and we hadn't really had a singular focus on that in the past either. And I didn't have experience in government relations other than, coordinating with the mayor's office on this ribbon cutting, or working with our local state reps or state senators on on hyper local issues. This was taking me to a place where I was having to look more broadly at policy decisions that were impacting the industry as a whole, the organization as a whole, from things that would regulate workers' compensation to alcohol distribution to incentives for new developments. That was a stretch. It was a real stretch and a big challenge. But I also found more inspiration for the assembly while leading that work, because I was collaborating with teams all across the state and collaborating with other leagues on policy development. And so, there's real value here in connectivity and the things that are going to raise the bar for us as a whole. So that's, I guess, a little bit of the background there.
One thing I know for sure is it can be exhausting and emotionally draining as you go after what you want in your career. Maybe you're ready for the next level, but you're not sure how to get there. Maybe you're not sure how to use your voice to grow your career, or you just don't feel seen and heard in your organization. And I don't want you to have to go at it alone. It is why I'm putting together a small group of women for the Be Seen and Heard at Work group coaching experience. If you are tired of things just going okay, this group may be for you. If you're ready to use your voice to influence change, speak truth to power, build your brand, and advocate for yourself without feeling like you're bragging, this group is for you. Enrollment opens soon. So in the meantime, I invite you to join the waiting list. Be the first to hear more about the program, and also when more spots open up. You probably already know this, but it's worth saying. There is something so powerful about women empowering women, and that's exactly what you'll get in this program. Coaching and accountability from me, and the support and empowerment from other women in this group. If this sounds like the right fit for you, head to the show notes and join the waiting list for the Be Seen and Heard at Work group coaching program. All right, let's get back to the episode. You said something interesting. So you took over an area. So you're in the policy space, but you were saying you didn't have that experience. What was that like? So often we get caught up in what we don't have versus the potential, and what the work we can do. What was that like for you? Was there self-doubt that creeped in, or were you just like, I can figure it out?
Yes. And it's so funny because just a couple of weeks ago, I had this realization that sometimes you can just be like, I won't put this on anybody else, just stupid confident. And it's a kind of a hyper or just I don't know, a contradiction of terms. It's like, you know what, I'll figure it out. And if I'm not smart enough to figure it out, then I know that and I can move on. But I might be really good at this. And I will never know if I don't give it a try. And I'll never know like how to help someone else be really good at this if I haven't given it a shot. You can be a good general leader and all, but if I were in the position to help someone else try and navigate this in the professional sports world, I wouldn't really know what that was like until I gave it a try. I go back to the stupid confidence because, sometimes you can be kind of maybe overconfident and that can hurt you, whether that's in negotiating or in your partnership negotiations or whatever the case may be. But sometimes you can just be stupid confident, and that, like a good shooter on the basketball court never remembers a missed shot, right? Because every new shot you take is going to go in. And I guess that's been kind of my approach, is that I got to give it a shot. If I don't give it a shot, it'll never happen.
I like that. That is going to stay with me for a really long time. Stupid confident. I love it.
I think it also, that really at the heart of that, and I should probably explain this, is that when you surround yourself with really smart and really talented people, it creates a safety net too. And so that, when you're in a good team and in a good network, it doesn't even have to be formal. It can be informal. There are people that just really aren't going to let you fail, or not completely fail. Like, you'll have stumbles here and there, you'll have fumbles here and there, but you need those to learn and grow. But if you're lucky and you have, a good solid network and a good team and the right people in your corner, then you have a better, I think, foundation to take risks and take chances, and to, give things that might be really intimidating or scary more consideration.
Yes, I agree. And having the right people in your corner is really important, regardless if you started your own business, if you're a startup, whatever, or if you're working within an organization. It's so important to have the right people in your corner. Call them whatever you want, allies in your network, whatever. Yeah. But I know for me, when I stepped out and decided to start my own business, there was the one thing I missed. It's like, I still have my network. That's not going anywhere, but I need to add to it. I need to add more people who are doing things like me, starting their own business, and, just getting to know them and calling them when you have an idea and just being like, is this crazy? And, and so I had to search for a really long time.
Yes, but you should do it. You're like, yeah, it's crazy, but you should do it.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. And sometimes people have said, I don't know if that's the best idea. And then that's when you have to go with your gut. Sometimes you're like, yeah, but I think I need to try it to see what's the worst that can happen. Right. But at least you kind of talked it through with somebody, and it just feels good. And that's something that took me a long time to find. My entrepreneur group, as I like to call them, it becomes a safety net. And it was the first thing that was gone when I left, working for teams, and I finally found it, and it makes a world of difference.
Yeah. What you just touched on, I think, is also another really important thing that helps ease the fear, is doing the research and really studying. And sometimes you get that through relationship, and sometimes you get that through books or through guides, and sometimes you end up creating your own. I'm sure that you've thought about writing a book. And
yes, I 100% have thought about that. It's on the list, and you can't see all the Post-its on my door right now, but I have so many ideas, and I'm like, okay, I just got to put them there for now and then come back and prioritize every quarter. So your episode is going to air end of June, but today happens to be the anniversary of George Floyd's death. And so I feel the need to just ask you, we talked a lot about this on my podcast, a year ago, and I would ask people for advice, mainly to share with other women in sports. Right? What do I do within my organization? How can I make change? I'm feeling inspired and motivated to make change. So I'm curious, it's been a year. What are you seeing out there that's different, right? That teams are doing to really impact the, take this racial awakening that's happened and really turn it into something good?
So 1 year ago today, we were planning to have our first advisory and governing board meeting for the Pro Sports Assembly, and we did on the morning of May 26th. The meeting by Zoom, which was it was great, but it was not the ideal way to be meeting, and bringing a group together for the first time when that's not what you had planned and not what people were used to at that point in time. We had our meeting, it was 10 a.m. Central Time, so 9, 10, 11, 12 on the morning of May the 26th. And by the time we got off of the calls, about a 2-hour meeting, I think, the news had started coming out about George Floyd. And, because on the 25th, when he actually died, there was still like the video footage hadn't been released. It started to come out, within 24 hours after that. A small group of us who were on the governing board reconnected, and I'll never forget the conversation that I had with SA and Brittany, and we agreed to shift gears a little bit. When we went into the meeting that morning of the 26th, our focus was really on the advancement of women in leadership. And within a few days, we went back to our advisory board and full governing board and told them, we think we need to shift to, stay on course with building the association to, represent the industry. But our purpose has got to be more broad, and that we're representing, men and women who've been underrepresented in leadership. That changed the course of, how our business is introduced, how the association's coming together, how members have come on board and engaged. I think one of the things that I've taken away has been a personal, point of growth for me. There have been so many. We were on a planning call for an Equality Can't Wait Challenge grant. And, one of the questions we were batting around and trying to think about, just future goal setting and whatnot in the state of the industry. And Deanna Witter, who's the chief revenue officer at the Houston Dynamo and Dash and BBVA Stadium, said that we're going to have a unique opportunity unlike any other time in professional sports if this goes on much further, because we're going to have so much attrition, and there's going to be so many positions that, people leave or are eliminated because organizations can't sustain it with no revenue. But when they do start to come back, when sport comes back, people are going to have a chance to hire with intention, and they're going to have a chance to hire in a way en masse across the industry to reset what the future of professional sports leadership looks like. That really struck a chord with me. And I, have had a lot of time to think about it because that conversation was so long ago, so early in the pandemic. Then, around these organizations started making statements about their commitment to diversity, their commitment to building equity, their commitment to doing that inside their organizations and outside of their organizations. And, they did it not knowing when this opportunity to reset would come about. And now we're in that time, for the last month or so, if you're on LinkedIn or if you get job board updates, like you see, like there's just so much activity going on from a hiring standpoint. When it comes to, organizational culture, there's, sure, your organization can make a statement and make it public facing, but you're making hiring decisions. You inside of the organization, no matter what level you're at, are most likely making a hiring decision right now over the course of the next few months. And with each hire that's made is an opportunity to recalibrate what the demographics of our industry look like from a leadership standpoint. One of the most, I would say, impactful demonstrations of that is how the NBA players 6+ years ago, took the time to be thoughtful about who they were going to hire to run their union. And when they hired Michelle Roberts, they demonstrated their belief in meritocracy and what got them to the point where, they were in their career and they got a badass. And her leadership has been transformational, and not just for the NBA players, but for the professional sports industry as a whole. I think because she has leaned into empowering them, to elevating their voice, elevating their platform, that has held other leaders and, in her strata to a new standard. it's empowered athletes, it's empowered employees, it's empowered women. And I just think that is a remarkable demonstration of what intentionality can lead to. And so whether or not other organizations and CEOs and top leaders across pro sports will, lean into that opportunity and demonstrate it, time will tell. Like, we are at that time. And in a few months, and when the new seasons all begin in 2022, we'll see how people rehired, and we'll see what the promotions look like, what the pathways look like, what the pipelines look like. And it'll be obvious. I think it'll be very obvious who took it seriously, who took the opportunity seriously, and who didn't.
Yeah.
And being able to support that work and help organizations learn how to take advantage of that opportunity is really exciting. And so I think, like, what you do by providing women a platform to highlight, their leadership, their work, is tremendously valuable. It provides them exposure to new folks. It allows them to demonstrate their thought leadership, and it highlights so many different things, but the impact and influence that they can have on an organization.
Yeah. And I really love what you said, right? There's this opportunity for all these teams. Like, we've had a year to absorb it and think about it and really truly take action. And right, I like what you said about new standards, recalibrate, and really the just being intentional about it. And then we're going to see. We're going to see it. Who's doing the work, and who's putting action behind their words.
Yeah. And I know people are, they're calling on their state leadership, the leadership at the national and federal level to enact change at the policy level. And President Biden had issued a challenge to have, the George Floyd Act in place by the 1-year anniversary. And unfortunately, that doesn't seem like it's happening unless somebody pulls a rabbit out of their hat today. We're not there yet, but we've got to keep pushing. I think there's maybe people who aren't used to working in the social justice space. And I'm not saying that people who work in the social justice space are immune to it. And I don't know, because I'm not kind of a newcomer in, many ways to the role that I'm in now. And we're not a social justice organization. It just is part of the body of work that we help our members work through. But people can get really tired when they're doing something new, because it exercises so many new muscles and, new ways of thinking, and it complicates your thinking if you're not used to working in a space around social justice and all the different factors that impact it. But social justice fatigue, I think is really real for a lot of people, and they're just maybe don't even know how to describe it. Keeping that at bay is one of the things that I just want to encourage people to figure out, how do you get re-energized? How do you reset? Because we need people to continue to work and to continue to push, raise the bar. And it's hard. It's hard work. And if everybody got fatigued at the same time, we'd be in a really tough place. So helping each other balance that out, and helping each other, renew their energy and their spirit around their work is really important. And sometimes that's social justice related, and sometimes it's not. But I think that's what you'll see a lot of people maybe trying to talk about, but not really knowing how to describe it.
Yeah. And I think that's really well said. There's this fatigue and exhaustion because you're doing something new, but you're not sure how to articulate it. You don't want to take your foot off the gas, but maybe you have to do for like just a minute just to take care of yourself. Yeah. That's important too. But then to keep going, like, it's okay that this is exhausting and sometimes uncomfortable, and you're just not sure what the right answer is. And we're all kind of figuring it out together, but you're taking action. And that's the most important thing.
Yeah, I had a friend who was on a school board president, and he said that their superintendent, through the pandemic and through, I guess, school closures and through the social justice, pandemic, and school closures, and this combination of things for school board leadership had just not been a mix before. And he said, our superintendent was so good. She would start every meeting by telling people, did you come with your buckets of grace? You need to have like buckets and buckets of grace, because for us to get through this and, really keep our kids in mind, like we're going to need to have, be surrounded by buckets of grace with each other.
Yes, I love that.
It was just a really good visual for me. Like,
Yeah. And I will be stealing that line. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Before I let you go, we have some rapid fire questions. Are you ready?
Oh, never, but let's do it.
Okay. 12 questions. First thing that comes to your mind. What is your favorite sports moment?
The most surreal sports moment, this is not favorite, but it's the most surreal, was sitting courtside for watching warm-ups when the news came out about Kobe. And being inside of an arena and just an hour or less from tip-off and seeing the energy change. It was just so surreal. And I had the kids with me at that game, and how the game started so differently, how you could tell everybody was shook. The players were shook, the coaches were shook, the fans were shook. It was the most surreal moment. It's just, I obviously can still feel that. Yeah, so I don't know, it's definitely not favorite, but it's most surreal. And it's just been on my mind recently.
Yeah, it's surreal, but and it also shows just the power of sports and athletes and what they do for us and what they mean to us, even if we don't know.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Okay, it's hard to
rapid fire down. I slowed that rapid fire.
Yes, and you also, so it's hard to segue to another question, but I'm just going to go with it. What is something people always get wrong about you?
No one laughs at my jokes, so I guess people just don't appreciate my humor. I don't know. Maybe my jokes are just really bad, and they're being kind by not even acknowledging them. I guess I would say people just don't get my humor. It's just for me, made just for me.
That's really funny. What's one food you wouldn't want to give up?
Cheese.
You're like my husband. Are you a morning or night person?
Morning.
Favorite holiday?
Thanksgiving.
What job would you be absolutely horrible at doing? I don't know that you have an answer for this.
Accounting. I just don't like, I would be bored out of my mind, but I don't know. Maybe I just haven't given a shot.
Yeah, it's like, there's that ambition.
Yeah.
Or what is it? Stupid confidence.
Yeah. Yes, there you go. I mean, I'm good with numbers, but it just seems like it would be a little bit mundane. But I know some really amazing accountants. So
you never know. What product would you stockpile if you found out they weren't going to sell it anymore?
Cheese. Shoes. Cheese and shoes.
Cheese and shoes. You'd be all set. What's your favorite app?
Oh, this is going to be so utilitarian. But I mean, it's just like Outlook, Google. I mean, I can't imagine being productive without either one. So I know I like Stitcher.
Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram?
LinkedIn.
Good one. You know what? Someone said that last time to me, and I said, I'm going to add LinkedIn to the rapid fire, and clearly I've not done that. As a child, what did you wish to become when you grew up?
Ooh, a doctor. I still have so many things that I have found signed Dr. Laura Dixon. Even through high school, Dr. Laura Dixon. I started as a pre-med major in undergrad, so it stuck for a while. But
that's it. All right. And then the last one, finish this sentence. The future of women working in sports is?
It's exciting. It's impactful. It's going to be better for everyone. I think that's one thing that women are really good at, is looking out for everyone. So
yes, I agree. Laura, this has been a pleasure. Thank you so much for the time today and sharing all this with us.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing your platform.
So what did you think of this episode? Do you know another woman who works or is aspiring to work in sports? Would you do me a favor and share this with them? It would mean so much if together we could support and inspire other women on their journey. And let's stay connected. I love meeting and talking to new people. Follow me on Instagram at Jahaan Blake and join the free Game of Her Own community by visiting jahaanblake.com. I can't wait to meet you.